All right, folks, I think we're live right now. So we're expecting a few people to actually join us, and I would expect them to join in the next few minutes. But we might start in about a minute, and we'll just see how we go from there. We're still waiting on Andrew Hiskins to be able to connect. He did connect, but unfortunately his computer has crashed, and he's having to reboot it. And knowing Andrew, he'll find another computer or something like that, and he'll be with us in a couple of minutes. All right, we might get going. So just allow me to go here. Right. Now, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, from Australia. We may have a few visitors from the US, so good evening or good morning to those folks as well. My name's Pete Hoban, and I'm an Education Officer at Sovereign Hill, an outdoor museum in Victoria, which tells the story of the 1850s gold rushes. But I'm also Treasurer of MAY, and MAY is the Museums Australia Education Group. We're a national body stretching across Australia, and we support education in museums, galleries and libraries and archives. And part of our remit is to conduct periodic online seminars about issues facing educators in museums. So we thought, what better time to run an event than the Connected Educator Month? As a result, we may have some international viewers on board, and that's if they're able to negotiate the different time zones. So this afternoon we've been able to collect together some experienced experts from across southeastern Australia to discuss how they are using technology in education programs in their museums. First, I'd like to introduce Christine Healy. Now, Christine is acting as producer tonight, and I'm wondering whether Christine might be able to just say a couple of words.
Hi everybody. So people can contribute to the conversation during the Hangout by typing questions in the Q&A box, and then other people can vote the questions up according to how much they're enjoying the questions. People might also choose to add questions later, comments, observations on social media. So that would be through our Facebook page, our Google Plus page, or on the blog where this video will eventually be posted on the museumsaustraliaeducation.wordpress.com. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Christine. And just to let everyone know, Christine is Manager of Education at Heidi. Have you got a second to say what Heidi is all about, Christine?
Heidi Museum of Modern Art. We have modern art, contemporary art, architecture, gardens, and amazing education programs.
Excellent. I'd next like to introduce you to Ange Casey, and Ange is from the the National Museum of Australia in Canberra, which is the national capital of Australia. So Ange, I wonder if you might introduce yourself for a second.
Oh, my pleasure. Hi everyone. As Pete said, my name's Ange Casey, and I'm the Manager of Learning Services up here at the National Museum of Australia. So that means my team is responsible for delivering programs for access audiences, family audiences and education audiences. We're delivering programs for in excess of 130,000 people a year. The education team, though, specifically delivers programs to over 30,000 students a year, and the education team has always used contemporary technologies to illuminate Australian history. The early days of innovative programming at the museum, such as the use of the house brick-like Sony Mavica digital cameras or the cutting-edge Talkback classroom program, really paved the way for the current range of digital tools and applications that we're using in education programs at the museum today.
Excellent. Thanks, Ange. I'd next like to introduce Cam Hocking, and now Cam is now working at the Museum of Victoria, and he's based at the Melbourne Museum there, but he has had a wide experience in a number of roles, including being a teacher and also working at the State Library of Victoria. So Cam, I wonder if you've got a couple of words of hello and what your job is right now.
Thanks, Pete. So yeah, my name's Cam Hocking. I work for Museum Victoria, which is the organisation which looks after 3 museums here in Melbourne. So At the moment, I'm at Melbourne Museum, and that's primarily where I work from, but I work across all 3 museums that we have. So we've got Melbourne Museum, which has natural history and science collections. We have Science Works, which is out at Spotswood in the west of Melbourne, and that looks at, obviously, science collections, and it's also got a real industrial history out there. And the 3rd museum that we have is the Immigration Museum, which is in Flinders Street in Melbourne. It's just on the banks of the Yarra. And it's the old Customs House. So the Immigration Museum focuses on the history of migration to Victoria and to Australia. And sitting over to my right, you can't see her, she's off camera, but we've got one of the education staff from the Immigration Museum, Jan Malloy here, who you might have heard about on Twitter. She might just pop her head in to say hello.
Hi, I'm tweeting.
So she's watching from the wings. And so yeah, we have those are the 3 primary venues that we our museums that we operate from. My role is the Digital Education Programs Coordinator, and I've been in that role for about 6 months. And so I look at anything to do with our digital education on-site, online, and off-site as well. So anything to do with apps that we use or that we develop in an education setting. And prior to that, I worked with Andrew, who's just popped up there over at the State Library of Victoria in a similar role. And it's nice to be here.
Thanks very much, Cam. Now, I'd like to thank Andrew because he's just getting on and he's probably trying to organise everything. Unfortunately, his computer seems to be dropping out every now and then. Andrew, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can, Pete. I'm just here at the moment. Can you hear me?
Yep, fantastic. Look, Andrew stepped in to fill the breach tonight, this afternoon, because Chris Nobbs, who's from the Adelaide Museum in South Australia, unfortunately couldn't make it because he's actually ill in hospital. He did quite an amount of work to try and get involved in this program, and he's really disappointed. But we send out our best wishes to Chris and hope he gets well very soon. But Andrew stepped in as the State Library of Victoria, and he's just stepped out. So we might leave Andrew for a minute, and we'll introduce him when he gets back. What I'd really like to do is start off by talking a little bit about the SAMR model, which is what someone put in front of me very recently, which talks about using technology in a classroom. And I've got to find the relevant piece of paper here. But it actually, SAMR stands for Substitution, Augmentation, Modification, and Redefinition. And it's being used in some circles, educational circles and otherwise, about how we're using technology, and whether we're just using it for substitution or whether we're using it for redefinition. Cam, you know a little bit about this, so can I invite you to, say a couple of words about it?
Yeah, so I'll put the image up on screen. That's kind of quite well known. You should be able to see it now, the SAMR model. So as you said, there are those 4 elements to it: the substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. This was developed by, and I always get his last name wrong, but Ruben Huntendera, I think it is. And it has been kind of quite widely spread. I went to a tech conference a little while ago where just about every presenter was talking about the SAMR model. I think it does have some uses in terms of just thinking about how you might use technology in education. My feeling is that maybe one of the things that's happening is possibly being misread a little bit and misrepresented as being that substitution is kind of the worst part and redefinition is the best part. I don't know if that's the best way to read this particular model, but it does kind of give you, I guess, a bit of a handy lens to think about technology. And it also, there's a lot of arguments that go on about technology of whether technology is just a tool or whether it is something more than that, and whether the technology actually shapes how we learn and what education is, or whether it's something that we just use as a tool. And I think there's a lot of value in having that conversation, because it's I kind of come down probably more to the idea that technology is not just a tool, but it really does shape us in many ways. And if you think about a tool like just a search engine like Google, that it does actually change almost completely the way that we have done things over time. So I think technology has probably some ethics to it and some morals to it, and it's something to consider. So SAMR is it's worth looking at. I wouldn't necessarily read it as a linear model saying that redefinition is the best, but it is a way of at least kind of thinking about how technology can shape education. And does that kind of gel with what you think about it?
Look, it's certainly really complementary to my thoughts about it. I mean, I think that it's really useful because it places technology firmly as a tool, and that's the useful thing, I think, for us as educators. So I mean, I like it because it really gives primacy to student voice by framing authentic content and authentic audiences around student learning. So it's creating really terrific opportunities for deep levels of engagement and also deep learning. Just a second. Sorry, guys. Can you just keep down a little bit? I think the anime is working pretty well at the moment, if I was to reflect on what we're doing. When you think about the SAMR model, particularly in terms of augmenting and modifying learning. But I take your point, Cam, that seeing it as a linear thing is not so useful. But I do think that the redefinition tasks are probably more easily achieved in an extended learning program, i.e. a classroom or a camp or what have you. And I should also add that, you know, not all the programs that we're running here at the museum use digital tools. They're part of the suite of tools that we'd use to engage students.
I think if you use it as a framework to be mindful about your use of technology, I know that at the museum that we've had a lot of conversations here about why we would use a particular piece of technology and does it change anything, or so I think it's always important to be thoughtful and mindful about why you actually do something. Then I also think it is important to kind of to dip your toes into the new technologies that are going to shape the way we work and the way we think and the way we learn, because otherwise we will then have them shaped by us instead. So, you know, I think it's important to kind of make those decisions and be cognizant of that. I would never say that we should just use a technology just because it exists, but you know, in an education program, we really are thoughtful, and if there's no need to have a technology, there's no way that we would put it into that program, because it would just take away from what we were trying to do.
It's a really interesting point you make about it not being linear, because I had read it that way, you know, and I had read it as being that substitution was bad and that redefinition is what we were really trying to aim for, and what we were trying to do is transform learning through the use of technology. And so it's a bit of a new perspective for me to think about that, you know, this enhancement, that it is just it doesn't have to be, you know, world-breaking new challenges that we are presenting via technology. But one of the things that's always worried me is that, you know, and I don't think it's said as often these days as it used to be said, that, you know, technology in and of itself was what was going to get kids involved, because they were going to be interested in technology and they were going to be engaged by the technology. And from my perspective, well, where I work in an outdoor history museum, you know, I don't think kids are actually able to engage by technology by itself. It's what the technology can do for them. Anyway, we now have Andrew. Thanks for making it, Andrew, because it looks like it's been a bit of a journey. I wonder if you could give a bit of an introduction about who you are, where you are, and where you work.
Sure. What I would say is at the moment I'm still kind of trying to use two technologies here, because I've joined you on my iPad because the laptop just isn't cutting it. But it's going to be a bit difficult to sort of do any presentation on, well, I can't do a presentation on this. So at the moment I'm trying to start. You know, technology is all about multitasking, and that's the thing. So I'm the manager of learning services at the State Library of Victoria, and I mean, I think our interest in this, and I was actually just sort of, as people were talking, I was just chatting, I was just jotting down, because our subject tonight is technology transforming learning in museums. But it occurred to me that there was another question, and a question that is kind of relevant to some of the work that we do, which is, are museums transforming technology learning in schools? Because that's the other thing that we can do. We can actually model new ways of using technology. We can assist teachers to come to understanding of new ways of doing things, but also in particular that those new ways are sometimes not all that dissimilar from the old ways, and you don't have to be quite as scared as you maybe thought you were going to be. So that's, I think, what I'll probably talk about in my sort of session at the end here, Pete.
Well, we might go on with that. The format for the program was to get each of our speakers to speak for 10 minutes about a program or about their thoughts on the topic of technology and how they've been using it. So we may start with you, Andrew, if you're feeling comfortable, or you're not comfortable yet.
No, I'm not. I'm trying to get it up on this
That's
screen
okay.
over here. There's another screen there.
We might
See,
move
it's
to
not behaving. It's not behaving at all.
We might move to Ange, if that's okay, Ange, and start with you and talk about, because you have done some cutting edge at the National Museum, and I well remember the program that you ran with those cameras that had the discs in them, years ago, and well, I was stunned by it. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, but I believe you've done a few different things since then.
Absolutely, and I'll share some slides with you in a moment. Pardon me. As I talk you through some of the work that we are doing at the moment. I'm just pulling, let me just get my, the technology is a bit new for me as well, so I'm just going to see if I can share a slide with you here. What are you seeing?
You.
I'm seeing a still photo of you, but if you keep talking, we might see something in
Okay, so I'm hoping that any minute now you're going to get a slide up on the screen. So if you can wave madly at me if this is what's happening, that would be absolutely marvellous.
I've got a blank slide on the screen.
You do? Sorry, Pete.
No, we've got your screen. We're just seeing Pete on it.
Oh, well.
You're sharing.
That's
you're sharing the Hangout.
Sharing his
video. Oh my gosh! You should see what I'm seeing. It's absolutely crazy.
Oh God, we are seeing what you're seeing.
Looks like the start of Doctor Who.
Yeah. Stop sharing, for goodness sake. Okay. Now we might try that again, I think. Let's see how we go. No, that's mad. Okay.
When you do the sharing thing, Ange, it should give you a number of options, but you'll have to have it open on your desktop, I think, for it to be able to see it.
Yes, definitely open on the desktop. So that's a bonus.
So when you're going to share, does it give you a number of options that you can possibly share?
Yes, it does.
You've got to
so
choose the one.
I've got to choose the right one. Let's try this one.
That's black.
No. That should look. It looks like I've gone into a time warp completely there.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so we're going to go a little bit old school. We're not going to let this defeat us. We're going to roll with that as much as we possibly can. So what I have here is one that I prepared earlier. Essentially, and you can see this well-worn piece of technology with the smash screen, but essentially here at the museum we are very keen on engaging students, but it's a combination of tools, as I've just said. It's gripping stories, it's potent objects and places, and of course it's digital tools as necessary or appropriate as well. I wanted to talk to you about a number of different programs that we have here at the museum. Some of them will be familiar to you, some of them not. So the first one I wanted to make mention of is this one here. I'll just try and get the glare off the screen. It's an app called the Museum Game, which most of you are familiar with. So the Museum Game is an app that we commissioned. So we worked in collaboration with some designers who are based in Tasmania, and it's a collaborative game-based learning experience that encourages divergent thinking, or on a good day anyway. The game in itself asks students to make connections between objects that they find on display, and teams then get to rate the connections that other players have made. And the interesting thing about it, I think, is that, again, I'm repeating myself already, it gives a great deal of primacy to student voice. It places student voice in a curatorial role, in a sense, in that they are commenting on the objects on display, and it's in a public forum, it's in the gallery space, it's emailed to them afterwards. So that project has been really very exciting for us, but it hasn't been an easy one because you know, as I said before, we have 30,000 students come through programs here at the museum, 90,000 students visiting the museum each year. On one level, it's a little bit of a sausage factory. Like, it's not, because it's clearly crafted and beautifully delivered programs all the time. But working with something that is in beta has been a real challenge for our delivery team. So we've completely committed to the museum game and very excited about the types of engagements that we're seeing students displaying in the gallery. But we're also just about to roll out another use of iPads in the gallery. So what you can see here is my extremely dodgy pic collage that I built this morning. So pic collage, and you might be really familiar with this app, is a really simple free app that allows you to select background, take, use, manipulate, edit, whatever, photographs, overlay text, use stickers, incorporate audio. So you're creating a collage. Now, at the moment, our long-form programs that a lot of students do involve using digital cameras down in the gallery, but we're keen to phase it out. It's certainly not emergent technology anymore, and we think that pic collage actually creates a much richer experience for students to build on their own visual literacy skills and, of course, historical literacy skills. And the point about pic collage is that it's very easy to implement, but it's also extremely easy to engage with. So in terms of universal design and universal access for students of all abilities and stages and ages, it's a cracker, I reckon. So the next one, if you've got questions, please stop at any point.
Can I just ask a question? That pic collage, you're setting challenges for kids using it, and what sort of things are you asking them to do?
Well, for example, the way we use cameras at the moment will vary depending on the theme of the program. In one of the programs where we're looking at historical sources, students head out into the gallery and as a group they'll select a module to explore. They'll identify the different types of sources that have been used in the telling of that story, and each student will identify one of those sources, they'll photograph it, and they'll take down some information about it. So with that particular program, we'd be using pic collage for them to build a collaborative picture of how that story is told in that particular module. We have another program that looks at a very broad look at Australian history, and students in that program using pic collage would do a task where they needed to select an object or a story that they find on display that they think is worthy of inclusion in their own timeline of Australian history or their own set of defining moments in Australian history, and build a collage that demonstrates their understanding of why that's an important story to be included. So the application varies, but essentially it's about giving primacy to a student opinion and a student voice, and it's about moving them to a point where they've produced, you know, it's citizen produced content that can be emailed back to them. That's the other great thing about pic collage: hit a button and it emails straight back to the school. So
I love it. I'm glad this is being recorded, because I'm going to come back and watch it and just steal all your ideas and call them ourselves, you know, our own. So
no, I believe all ideas should be shared, good and bad. It's really what you do with the idea, not how good the idea is. So let me tell you about the next one. This one's quite interesting. At the moment, we're partnering with a little company here in Canberra called Quizling. And Quizling have had some grant money to develop an app that is basically a quiz maker. So Quizling allows teachers or students or cultural institutions to build quizzes, share those quizzes, play those quizzes. Okay, so I was down at Cockatoo Island with Joe Henwood just a couple of weeks ago. We mocked up some screens of what a quiz set on Cockatoo Island might look like, and you can see that here. The app allows you to insert additional information, which in the case of, you know, a cultural institution using it could even be wayfinding information, I'd suggest, as well as additional content. But it also allows you to track all sorts of data. Okay, so it becomes quite a pretty powerful analytical tool there for you as well. That's especially for teachers, I'd suggest. But the capacity to build up a game community is really powerful with this. So as a tool for us to try and help engage those 60,000 students who don't do a program with us, if they could play a few quizzes about the museum before they get here, get a bit excited about the content they're going to encounter, that's a good thing. And, you know, the data tracking is also really, really interesting. The other thing is that, you know, I don't know, go figure. You know, the universal appeal of quizzes is something that I don't get, but despite the fact that I don't get it, it's still true. It's out there. The kids do enjoy those kind of gaming activities. So Quizling's in, it's being developed at the moment. We're going to be trialling it here over the next, I guess, 3 terms. And at that point, they're going to be looking to do a general release of the app. So that's another very simple off-the-shelf product that you can be using immediately. Because I think, you know, picking up on something that Cam said before, it's really it's critical that, you know, you don't just use a tool because a tool's available. It's got to be meaningfully implemented. But the extension of that is, you know, we've got to play in those exciting spaces where as Andrew said, we've got the capacity to shape digital education because of the work we're doing, but we also need to get to the bread and butter of what we're doing and have easy to implement, run, engaging programs for the students who visit us. Well, that's what I reckon anyway.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I wonder if anyone else has got a comment to make or a question at the moment.
I've just added those links to the side under questions for people if they'd like to look at them further.
You're speedy, Christine. That's great.
Quizling sounds like lots of fun. Does it take very much time to set up?
No, not at all. And I know that the developers are keen to build relationships with cultural institutions and start pushing the app out there. So, you know, if people were really interested, getting in contact with me is probably the best way to move that along at this point in time. But it isn't. It's easy to set up. It's certainly designed for students to be building quizzes as well as teachers or cultural institutions. And I guess that's where, you know, the SAMR model, or maybe not SAMR model so much, but you're seeing there the one app providing opportunities for relatively low levels of engagement and really high levels of engagement too. So it's, I guess, universal access in a sense as well. I wanted to briefly make mention of another project that you're probably mostly familiar with as well. It's the Museum Robot Project, and this project is a partnership project with the CSIRO. So it's a telepresence project. Now the robot project basically takes a off-the-shelf components of different technologies and combines them in a new way. It's very $6 million man. Essentially, the robot understands where it is in the gallery, so we've laser mapped the gallery spaces, and it can navigate itself around the gallery spaces whilst avoiding obstacles such as visitors. So that's relatively nifty in itself. We don't let the robot out by itself. It's really important that that experience of the robot is mediated by an educator. In addition to the robot moving around the galleries, the robot has 2 cameras mounted to it. Now, one camera is just a presenter camera, so it's focused on the educator, but the other camera is a panoramic view. So up to 16 different endpoints can dial into the robot at any one point in time. And just say I'm one of the endpoints. I can use my mouse to manipulate that panorama shot, and I can look all the way up, all the way down, over at that exhibit, over at that exhibit. But whatever I'm looking at, I'm not interfering with anyone else's view. So Pete could be dialed in as one of the other 16 endpoints, and he can look at what he wants, and we're not interfering with each other. So it's sort of, I think of it as kind of like a fly's eye, the camera on the top of the robot. But additional to that, we can inset an absolute heap of digital content. Let me try and get that a bit better for you, not so glary. Sorry, that's absolutely hopeless. When you're looking around the gallery through the panorama camera, some objects will appear to be highlighted in blue, and you can click on those to get still image, moving image, sound, all sorts of different media, text, etc. So the museum robot project is very exciting for connecting remote audiences, both international and national.
That's just fantastic. One of the questions I'm going to ask you later on is about money and how much it costs, etc. But if it's okay with you, we may move on now to Andrew, who we've got two of Andrew, so we'll just see which Andrew will be able to speak.
Well, yeah, okay. God, I'm getting myself confused at this stage.
Andrew, maybe just mute one of your microphones.
I've just unplugged one.
Ah, beautiful.
Oh, God, that's even worse. There, it's probably better. Oh, for God's sake.
It's like the museum robot. We're getting all those different views with Andrew. 16 different views.
How are you going, Andrew? Will we move on to Cam for a minute and let you settle in?
Can I just add something else in then, Pete, while we're just at a pause point? I just wanted to, I was also going to talk very briefly about the redevelopment of a children's space in the museum called K-Space, but I'll skip on beyond that and just say that we're also, coming back to this idea of the young person's voice being given a position within the museum. We also use just a video feedback booth for collection of feedback from our young people who participate in our holiday programs. And I really love the fact that those young people's voices are now appearing on our website through our families page. And I was looking this morning at a couple of the videos and was totally taken by a young man who would have been maybe 11, who in a very considered tone said, "I really like how your activities are based on your recent exhibitions." I thought, wow, he gets it. That's awesome, you know. But I guess the point is that the digital tools allow young people's thoughts, opinions, and I guess constructions to be polished and available to an authentic audience, and that's really powerful learning. There you go, finished now.
Good on you. How are you going, Andrew?
Oh God, I have had with my laptop today. This is the third time I've tried to boot it. I mean, the iPad, the one that I'm pointing at now, seems to be working in fine, but I can't screen share off it, which is the real drag. So let me just try and screen share, and if it doesn't, what I'll do is I'll talk to my slides on this, and I'll talk to you on that. That might be the best thing. So wish me luck. I've got my fingers crossed, and we'll try and screen share. Oh, come on. Oh, absolutely hopeless. Oh.
Pete, now might be a good time too to delete some of the questions that have popped up and comments on the right-hand column.
I'm actually trying to do that, but not having a lot of success like Andrew. So, Andrew, if it suits you, we may move on to Cam just for a little while.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Yep.
Cam?
Okay, sorry. So I'll just get... So feel free to kind of yell out as I'm talking, because there's nothing worse than just yammering away and not knowing if anyone's listening. So basically, I thought what I might do is just go through a couple of our programs to start with, and just talk through how we're using technology in our on-site programs, and then talk about a couple of the other things that we've started to look at in the last couple of months. So I just wanted to show you first of all. So as I said, I work across 3 venues. In the screen share there, you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner there is a computer there. That is Victoria's first computer. It's called CIRAC, and that's one of the computers that was, it started in 1949. So just to give you a bit of an idea of the size of the computers back in those days, I thought it might be worth putting in. That sits in the basement. You can see it at Melbourne Museum. So some of our on-site programs that have been using technology for a little while now, obviously we had experimented with things like flip cameras and some of that technology, and then really what changed some of our programs was the iPad and the iPod. And the first program that we're looking at here is called Human Evolution, and this was done with the first generation iPads, and we can see the students there. So this is one of the examples of a program that runs in a classroom. So the Human Evolution program is run in one of our activity rooms. It's a nice closed space, it's not noisy, and it gives students the chance to really sink their teeth into the program. This runs for an hour, or for your PCA students, it runs for an hour and a half. And basically the student is measuring different skulls, and they are then inputting data into an interactive PDF that collates all of the information. They make observations based on the skulls about human evolution, and then that PDF gets sent back to their school. So they've got the record of their work that they've done there in the Human Evolution program. So that's one example that was developed by Jonathan, who was in the role before me, and Jim Abbott, who's one of the science educators here. The second program that we could look at is, this one is called 600 Million Years in 60 Seconds, and this is another science program. And this is the kit that students receive, and they also make use of an iPod, so they work in groups. And you can see there, just attached to the kit, there are some different roles. One is a camera person, one is a director, one is a presenter. They get a card that explains their mission to them, and this is one that's done. So we have a little space in our Science and Life gallery, in our Earth gallery, which is kind of like a little classroom. So the introduction gets done there. And then the students head off into the exhibition and they go around and they're given a task. They have to investigate a particular object, a particular theme, and their job is to produce a little video. So for this one, they're using iMovie, and they're limited to making a product that is 60 seconds long, and that movie then gets sent back to their school. So a lot of teachers will actually book this one as an assessment task. They'll do it each year. They'll tell the students that this is the task that is going to be assessed. And there are 2 programs like this. There's this one and Rock's Camera Action, which is another similar program. And one of the things that's really important is you can actually give them an object that they can also then use. So what they, some of this kind of collateral that gets built around the programs is really important. Priscilla Gaff, who's the educator that worked on this one, has mentioned to me that the feeling of actually getting the crate and opening it up is really important to students. So it gives them a sense that they're doing something very different to what they would regularly do in a classroom. And I think that's one of the benefits that we have in our type of education, is that we can really set up these moments that are quite special, making the use of our exhibitions or making the use of objects, or in this case these crates that we're using. So that has led to another program that we've recently developed and launched, and this one has been going for 1 term now, and this is to do with our first People's Exhibition, which is also at Melbourne Museum, part of the Bunjalaka Centre. And so this is the Our Shared History program, and Our Shared History has run for quite a while, but in the last term we have started to use iPads in there to give students a different experience. So we can see these are some of the pictures that students have taken within the exhibition. sorry, I had to blur out the background of the students because we didn't have permission for it, but you can see, so they're taking photos of objects in cases, they're getting up close to the dioramas, or to the, on the right-hand side, you'll see there's an art installation, a picture, or an installation based on a picture by Tommy McRae. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a diorama or an installation that shows how an eel trap works. And up in the top left-hand corner, we've got a picture of a kinetic sculpture called Bungel's Nest. Basically, what we do is we give the students iPad minis. This is working with grade 3 and 4 students, so we do about a 5-minute introduction to the app that they're going to use, and we give them very clear instructions about what we expect, because one of the important things, I think, is to set up an environment where students can succeed. So a lot of students at that level will be a little bit hesitant. They might think, you know, I don't know if I'm doing the thing that you want me to do, so we really give them clear instructions. And what they produce is a little video. So basically, in the Book Creator app, and I'll click to the next one and we can see it there, the Book Creator app allows students to take pictures, to add them to a page, and then they can also, you can see I've drawn on there with the pen, so I can, if I want to, I can draw around a particular object, I can annotate it. But the most important feature, I think, is that they can also record their voice. So the students work in pairs with this app. Each pair gets an iPad mini, and we tell them one picture, one sound recording for each page. They can do as many pages as they like. This is the Diprotodon, a megafauna from about 45,000 years ago. And in this case, the students also get a card just to this section of the exhibition that kind of gives them a bit of direction. And that card allows us to rewrite the panel a little bit to make it, to apply it for the right level. And the fact that the students don't have to write, that they can record their voice and they can interview each other, and they really do get into it. And I think this backs up, Pete, what you were saying before about the technology not being the driver. But when we tell the students, you're going to make a video, and we're going to send that back, and your teacher will get a link to the Dropbox, and you'll get your videos back at school, and you'll have a record of the day and your experience here. It really does make a huge difference, and they get very excited. They're not excited about the iPads, they're excited about the fact that they're going to be creating something. So this takes a lot of the pressure, I guess, off the presenter. That means that they're not talking quite so much. It means the students can go off and explore. And what we've found is that as this program has developed, it has become, and we actually started with an app that kind of, you could work in a PDF and put pictures into it, so there was information that was on the iPad as well. And we kind of threw that out quite early and realised that it's better to give students a blank slate and that they create some quite amazing things. And they take some beautiful photographs. The students are really switched on. They want to sit down at the end and make sure that their book is all pretty and that it's all nicely organised and that everything's done right, and they got their nice pictures in there. And what we also think is, so the two of the benefits are that the teachers are really interested in, they kind of have been booking and not knowing that they get a product at the end. We think that the students are going to get back to school and say to the teachers, hey, you know, did you get our link? Can we see our videos? Which continues the conversation back in the classroom. But also what it allows us to do, and we just sat down at the end of term and randomly picked out, say, 10 videos, that we could watch them and assess how effective the program is as well. So our education team were able to just watch those videos and just to see how they worked and whether there were any misconceptions or whether there was anything that was happening that, you know, we wanted to kind of address in the next term. And I've got to admit, I was kind of a bit apprehensive. I thought there might be some videos that weren't quite fabulous, and I was amazed by every random video that we picked. It was really good. The students, they were using words like I reckon and I think, rather than just, you know, this is an object. They're actually thinking about how it had been made or what it had been used for. I think that's a really good sign for, you know, a historical and cultural study, that they really want to kind of think about it rather than just being told. So, you know, they're kind of investigating to make their videos. I'll share the link to this presentation because it's got all the links to those apps. That app is $6.50. It produces either a video or an ebook that has the pictures and the sound files in it. So there's a free version that the teachers can download onto the iPads back at school. So it means that they can also make use of that work later on. And we're finding now that with that program and with that app, that now it's starting to apply to other ones that we're doing as well. So, you know, we're kind of making use of Book Creator quite a bit. The next app that we're looking at using is one called Shadow Puppet, and this is for a program that we're developing at ScienceWorks, which looks at design. ScienceWorks has got a great new exhibition called Think Ahead, which looks at the past, the present, and the future. So we've trialled this one with some students. These are drawings of students. We got them to got the post-it notes out, and they were designing what they thought might be a way of solving a problem from today or from the future. And Shadow Puppet's great because you can take your pictures and then you can annotate over the top of it with your voice as well. So you make another little video. We want to mix the physical and the digital in that one because the post-it notes are kind of, a great thinking tool that you can move it around and you can reorder it. But then we want the students to actually produce something that they can send back. So again, Shadow Puppet's a great one. It's got a really good student privacy settings. It's a great app, and it's one that we're exploring. And I've got a link there. We actually tested it the other day on a little tour that I'll talk about in a moment, where two of our educators did one about the Yarra River. So if you want to have a look at the link, you can see how a Shadow Puppet comes out. You can actually annotate video and pictures in it. So another nice little app, and that one's free. And there's an education version of the app which has different permissions. So Shadow Puppet EDU is the one to get. It shares to the internet, or you can save it to your camera roll, which I think is really important. We don't want to have to publish something if we don't need to, that we put it into a private Dropbox and send it to the teacher. Just as an example of kind of thinking about technology and how it can shape us a little bit, this is a project that's happening right now with some students from Presentation College. They're out at ScienceWorks and they're working on a pilot project, and they're using our 3D printer and the Tinkercad program, which is a free in-browser 3D designer. And they've been given the task of they're tasked with designing an amplifier for a mobile phone. So we have 6 Year 10 students who are currently working out there as part of a special program called ACORN, and these are 3 prototypes. So from left to right, we've got prototype number 1, prototype number 2, and the last prototype that they printed out yesterday. You can see the development. They talked to an audio engineer, but the 3D printer allows them to do this rapid prototyping. They're really excited about getting their prints done and seeing how the print works. They're learning about the problems with 3D printing and the limitations as well. So they're doing the design elements, they're doing the print, and I think that's a really exciting program to think about how design can work and how you can start to do that type of prototyping. And to actually get something off a 3D printer that you've designed is still pretty exciting. Fabulous idea of how you can use it. The next and different technology, I guess I've kind of talked a little bit about what we're doing inside the museums, but this one is one where we went outside the museum. Last Friday we ran a bit of a pilot with a few of our education team, and we did a Twitter tour of Melbourne. So if you want to follow us on MV Teachers, that's our Twitter account. And we actually went out with a few different educators, one from Bunjalaka, from Melbourne Museum, one from Immigration Museum, and we went around the city from the Yarra and the Immigration Museum up to Melbourne Museum. We just wanted to kind of talk through a few different apps that people might use when they're out on location-based learning and city experiences. So you can see we use Book Creator to do some sketches. The one in the middle is a freehand sketch by John Patton, who's an artist and an educator who works here. The one on the right is my tracing. You can see that I am not an artist. So that's great about Book Creator. You can take a picture and then trace over it, which is good for me because I am terrible at drawing. But what we thought was that that's another way that we can actually start to get out and about and do something a little bit different, and as a bit of a model for how we might be able to get some of our collection items out into place rather than just having collection items that sit in an exhibition, that we can get out and talk about what we've got. And it was a really interesting way of just getting out and learning from each other, and I think we want to then maybe apply that with students as well. And Twitter's great for doing that because you can do it really quickly, and people were quite interested, I think, and so there's a link there to a little storify of the highlights of our Twitter tour. It's great fun, it's very hard work, and we all walked around with iPads and iPhones, and none of us really were looking at each other or looking at the trams, and I was a bit worried at one stage. I thought Jan was going to get cleaned up by a tram in Burke Street, so something to think about as well. And the last one that I thought I might talk about is, this is a screen grab. It's not really all that exciting, but we're using Google Hangouts, and And what we're doing, this is actually next Wednesday. The screen grab we've got here is a test that we did, and next Wednesday we've got one of our paleontologists who is doing a behind-the-scenes tour for grades 4 to 6 using Google Hangouts, and we're going to be in the paleontology store underneath Royal Exhibition Building. Now that's normally a completely closed-off area. Even I can't go across and swipe in over there. I have to be let in by the paleontologist to get in there. But what we're going to do is we've got a couple of cameras, and we're doing a Google Hangout, and we tested it the other day, and we're going to be following Eric Fitzgerald, who's the paleontologist there, as he goes through the paleontology story and talks about some of the objects, and we'll be taking questions from the students who are joining in from all over the state. And really what we wanted to do was think about the fact that technology and streaming technology, there's no point just sitting there and kind of talking, that we want to make it an opportunity for students to ask questions and for them to shape the experience, because for presenters that makes it a much more exciting experience too. We used Polycom to do a Meet the Scientist talk, which was a bit more like a lecture and had 5 scientists talking for about 10 minutes. Polycom is the units that have been bought for a lot of the Victorian schools, and we have a Polycom unit, so we streamed that event. That was Meet the Scientist. And then we thought, well, we want to go to something that's even a bit more agile, and Google Hangouts, we can do it with a webcam and a laptop. We can take it anywhere as long as we've got wireless. So we're doing one with a paleontologist. We've got one with a rapper coming up, Alfresh the Lion, who's going to talk about talking difference and the Immigration Museum. And it's just a kind of exciting and different way of doing things. And I think one of the other things is you've got to just test it and see if it works. And we've got to be a bit nervous about whether the technology will work underneath the exhibition building, but we'll see how it goes. And hopefully it's another way of getting the expertise out to students and having them see that this is the everyday work of a paleontologist and this is what they do, but also to get something a little bit special, because not many people get to go under there, so even to do it with a live camera is pretty exciting. So I'll kind of stop there and feel free to ask any questions or anything like that. One of the things that we do obviously have is we build other apps like the Field Guide app, and we've got an app called TimeLens, but really I thought I might just talk about some of the apps that we are just using off the shelf, because one of the great things about that is that teachers can then come in and do exactly the same thing, and they can use those apps. And we often find that the off-the-shelf apps are better because the developers are constantly working on them, and it's a much better way to go than having to build your own. While we do build our own sometimes, for a school program, it's not really feasible. So it's good that there are ones out there that we can use.
That's incredibly interesting stuff, Cam, and I've got about 45 questions that I've written down, but I'm quite cognizant of the fact that we're running out of time, and we haven't left a lot of time for Andrew. So I hope you will forgive me if we jump straight to Andrew to see what Andrew's got to say. And over to you, Andrew.
Okay, thanks. Now I'm just trying to share screens and see how that works, and I'll go full screen, and hopefully that is coming up on your screen. Is it? Yep. Nothing.
Just black.
Oh, good. Yet? Nothing?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Good. So I'm actually I'm going to keep both devices going. Over here, I've got my iPad, and here I've got the laptop. So because if I close that down, this is bound to crash. So I guess what I wanted to briefly talk about, and it's kind of old, it's slightly old news, is our personal learning network program and the way in which we've developed it, and partially that's because I've jumped in at the last moment to fill in Chris's bit, so I've actually had to rely on previously existing presentations. But our personal learning network program has been a program that we've run over probably 6 or more years for teachers, school librarians, and school and staff who are trying to work with new technologies, but also to really to demystify them for them, it's about using new technologies to actually teach about technologies. So it uses Web 2 technologies, and was originally designed in the US when Web 2 first started breaking by a woman called Helen Blowers. So we've taken that model and we've used that to really try and enhance people's sense of developing their own learning networks and how they might go about using others to help them learn. So I'll just step through these slides because we haven't got much time, but the way in which I've normally thought about it is that if you think about, you haven't even caught up with me here. You're not on this slide, are you? You don't have a... No, I'm way ahead of you on slides. Okay, I'm going to forget about that. Okay, is that working better? Hello? No. Okay. Pete, I might bail on this. This is totally not going to work for me.
Okay, Andrew. Look, can I say, look, a particular thank you because you have stepped in at the very last minute here, and obviously you're having some difficulties with the technologies, which is you know, pretty similar for all of us most of the time, particularly when I'm in front of a class. That's when it seems to happen. Look, it's time now. We've only got a couple of minutes left, really, because we're due to finish at 5 o'clock. I have just two quick questions, and it's to all three of you, and it is, how are you evaluating, or the first, one question really, how are you evaluating the success of these programs? Now, I know, Cam, you were talking about looking at the videos and being able to sort of, you know, see what kids were coming up with. I mean, you know, how, considering it costs a lot of money for a lot of these sorts of things, maybe not the cheaper apps, but maybe for the ones you're developing, how are you evaluating these programs?
Do you want me to go first?
Yes, please.
So yeah, obviously the fact that when we use digital, it does allow students to produce something that we can then keep a copy of. We keep that privately. That's private. That's important to emphasise, that only the teachers get the link. So it does allow us to do that assessment, which is really, really useful. If it was, you know, a trail, or if we were doing a tour, it's very difficult, I think, to do that. You can obviously ask teachers whether they think it's a good experience and what they got out of it. And then I guess the other thing is that it's kind of a bit of a simple answer, but I think you also go by gut feel, and you talk to the students and you see what they're doing. And so if you mix those two things together, you've got the product, but then you also observe and you see what they're up to, that you can start to assess whether it's actually valuable or not. And one of the good things is that, at least in the team that I work in, is that almost everyone will challenge the use of technology and say, well, you know, why are we doing this? And if we have that robust conversation, that we really do nut it out and we work it out, and we kind of can say, well, yeah, that is actually valuable, or we don't think it's worth doing.
Ange, have you got a response to that? I mean, considering this robot must have cost millions, did it?
Yeah, the robot certainly wasn't a cheap project, but and that came about through the now defunct Department of Broadband funding. So I mean, I would almost consider that one in quite a different category, because it is a pilot project. So certainly CSIRO would have hopes that this technology would then be you know, would be successful in this application and something that would be attractive to other institutions as well. In terms of our more regular programming, I really agree with what Cam said about having evidence of student work. That's very powerful. But we're also using just our existing evaluation streams, and so that's, you know, super low tech. It's a A4 piece of paper that we give to the teacher that's then manually entered into a database. But that is showing us a couple of things. It's showing us really high levels of engagement in the museum game program and in programs that use technology. And we're also then, of course, able to track what is being booked. And we're seeing great uptake of particularly the museum game.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Andrew, have you got a comment about evaluation?
Well, the program that I would have told you about, it was aimed at teachers and professionals working with young people, and because of the nature of the kind of learning diaries that people keep and the response to things, there's a lot of evidence of the kind of learning that they're doing. But we did a really interesting piece of work with that a couple of years ago, and one of the things that I've always thought was a great way of thinking about what learning feels like. There's a piece of work that Stephen Heppel did years ago, which was looking at characteristics of people's best learning experiences. So they did this kind of what he called a survey of 1,000, and those characteristics included things like a sense of having learned, that it was a social experience, that it was supported in some way, that it was tough but not too tough. A whole range of different things like that, and I mean these things I can provide links for to actually see what the rest of the things were. But instead of surveying and asking people, did you like it, which is a fairly bland way of finding out about stuff, if you actually have a good sense of the characteristics that you're looking for in the experience, and then you ask the questions about those characteristics, then that's effectively you're getting quantitative data about what is is a qualitative kind of experience, and so it's an aggregated narrative of what people have experienced by doing the program. So you certainly get that in the comments and things like that. And the other thing that I was going to talk about today was a program that's really just finished that we've been running with our Centre for Youth Literature called Shift Out Story, which is one of those methodologies that we've applied in the past to personal learning network type programs to actually help teachers and librarians explore new ways of using narrative and new technologies around and how that shifts things, but how much remains the same. And so, I mean, there's quite a lot of rich material that you can get in terms of how people describe their experiences, but equally, just actually having a sense of those characteristics that you want people to have of the experience is a really powerful way of knowing that you've succeeded in the end.
Yeah, that's a really interesting sort of insight. I'm very aware of the fact that we've run over time, so we might finish up now, and I reckon our next one might have to be about evaluation. But look, I would like to thank all of you for your presentations tonight, and what has really impressed me is the pedagogical background that you're bringing to this, and the way you can actually describe what you're doing in terms of pedagogy, and I think that's just fantastic. I know I'm known as the pedagogy nerd at the place that I work, but look, I'm going to test my technological skills here. And first of all, I'd like to thank Andrew. Thank you, yes. I'd like to thank Ange, but she has all the money. I would like to thank Cam. And I would also like to thank Christine, who's been working furiously behind the scenes. And so on that note of my extensive use of technology, we might finish this one. Christine, I wonder if you've got a comment about where people might be able to see this again.
Yes, it will be on the WordPress blog, so museumsaustraliaeducation.wordpress.com.
Cool.
Thanks everyone for your involvement. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I now need to go and look at a lot more apps, I think, so I may have to come and visit some people that have been presenting tonight. Thanks very much, folks, and we might finish right there. See you later.
Thanks.
Thanks.